conducting an overseas TV viewer survey to provide you with a better global broadcast service. Share your valuable feedback on the Arirang TV website www.arirang.com or mobile application. Survey participants will be selected at random to receive special gifts. 2025 Arirang Overseas TV Viewers Survey. We look forward to hearing from you.
Welcome to our morning edition of Arirang News. We begin with these stories making the headlines at this hour. With just days left until the July 9 deadline for tariffs, U.S. President Donald Trump says he will start sending out letters to other countries as early as July 4th. President Trump also discussed Ukraine with his Russian counterpart Vladimir Putin in a phone call, but the two sides weren't able to make meaningful progress on ending the war. Kim Min-seok has now become the Prime Minister of South Korea after the parliament gave the green light for the four-term lawmaker to take the role. Rival parties also passed a revision of the Commercial Act during a plenary session at the Nat'l Assembly. We begin in the U.S., where President Donald Trump says he'll begin sending letters about tariff rates to countries starting this week. With just days left before a temporary halt on tariffs expires, countries are scrambling to meet the deadline. Our Park Eun-woo starts us off.
U.S. President Donald Trump is preparing to send out letters this week, notifying countries of the tariffs they'll have to pay.
We have, far more than 170 countries. And how many deals can you make? And you can make good deals, but they're very much more complicated. I'd rather send out a letter saying this is what you're going to pay to.
He added that roughly 10 countries will receive these letters each day, starting Friday. U.S. Treasury Secretary Scott Bessent said Thursday that Trump will be the one to judge whether negotiating countries are acting in good faith. But he also warned that tariff rates set in early April could boomerang back if talks fall through, with discussions ongoing.
Negotiations with the United States are ongoing as we speak. We are ready for a deal. We want a negotiated solution, and we're preparing for the possibility that no satisfactory agreement is reached. All the instruments are on the table.
South Korea, with a 25% tariff rate set in April, is also working to meet the deadline amid some uncertainty.
7월 8일까지 끝낼 수 있는지도 확언하기 어려워요. 지금 최선을 다하고 있습니다. 최선을 다하고 있고 또 쌍방의 모두에게 도움이 되는 그야말로 호혜적인 그런 결과를 만들어내야 하는데 아직까지도 쌍방이 정확하게 뭘 원하는지가 명확하게 정리되지는 못한 상태입니다.
South Korea's Trade Ministry said Chief Trade Negotiator Yo Han-gu is making plans to visit the U.S. for talks this weekend for a second round of trade talks with the aim of reaching an agreement before the deadline. Park Gon-woo, Arirang News.
So it's less than a week before a 90-day pause on Trump's so-called reciprocal tariffs is set to expire. Eyes are now on whether the South Korean government will be able to reach a trade deal. For more on what to expect, we're joined by Professor Kim Min-seok, professor at Seogang Business School. Professor Kim, thanks for joining us this morning.
Good morning. Happy to be here.
Good morning. So the UK and Vietnam have struck trade deals with the United States, while Trump specifically cast doubt on the possibility of a trade deal with Japan. What do you think will be the case for South Korea?
Well, as we mentioned, the UK and Vietnam became the countries which complete the trade deal with the U.S. And then the U.S. will charge 20% tariff on import from Vietnam under a new trade deal. In addition to it, this is a very interesting part, the U.S. will impose a steeper tariff of 40% on goods that pass through Vietnam in a process so-called transshipping, which amount would be a third of all Vietnamese export to U.S., according to Peter Navarro, Trump's senior counsel on trade and manufacturing. Most interesting part of the deal to me is what Mr. Trump mentioned. The president said on social media, Vietnam will do something that they have never done before, give the United States of America total access to their market for trade. In other words, they will open their market to the United States, meaning that we'll be able to sell our product into Vietnam at zero tariff. I think, this is the very nature of the deal. Mr. Trump wants to open up the market of the trade partners to U.S. He made it in the negotiation with Vietnam. Based on that understanding, we can guess what will be happening to the Korea-U.S. deal. The negotiation between Korea and the U.S. is still going on. The target outcome of the U.S. is not very clear or clearly delivered to Korean negotiators. So the two countries need more time to negotiate before they close the deal at the moment. I think, the due date will be extended once more.
I see. And South Korea's top trade negotiator is set to visit Washington again this weekend. And this comes just days before the deadline. What will be the #1 priority for Korean officials as they, work to reach a deal and minimize the impact of potential tariffs?
Well, we can understand the situation of the tariff negotiation between two countries through the President Lee Jae-myung's press conference yesterday. President Lee told the press conference yesterday, marking his 30 days in office, that tariff negotiations were clearly not easy, and it was difficult to say for sure whether to complete the negotiations by July 8th, although his government was doing its best. Seoul and Washington should produce mutually beneficial outcomes, but what each side demanded had yet to be clearly decided. Based on the statement of the president, what we can see is that the negotiation won't be closed within the time frame suggested by the U.S. So the priority of the Korean delegation will be the understanding of the key purpose of the U.S. I mean, what kind of things the U.S. want to achieve, and getting of the due date extension for the trade negotiation.
Right, it really is a difficult issue indeed. And South Korea's proposed regulations on U.S. e-commerce firms doing business in South Korea are reportedly complicating negotiations. And the issue of digital trade seems to be a major sticking point in the talks, right?
Yeah. It will be one of the key issues that need to be discussed in the trade negotiation. It is known that 43 lawmakers of the United States urged the Donald Trump administration to address what they call the Korean government unfair barriers, like non-tariff barriers, right? Targeting American digital service providers. Online Platform Act of Korea has been discussed for a long time to regulate the monopolistic online platforms to protect the users. Under the previous Yoon Suk-yeol administration, there were bipartisan effort to designate major online platform operators subject to stricter antitrust regulations. Although the antitrust regulator ultimately decided to target dominant players only when irregularities are uncovered. The U.S., has continuously objected to the proposed changes, warning of possible retaliation. So, in sum, the online platform regulation of Korea would be on the trade negotiation table, absolutely.
Right. And what cards does South Korea hold in tariff negotiations with the U.S., do you think?
Well, that's the part, Still, President, Lee Jae-myung said, we are preparing for that. But anyway, we have been discussing the issues quite a long time. It is very clear now, what the Trump administration really achieves through the tariff negotiation. If they impose the planned tariff on the imported goods, the consumer price in the United States will go up to negatively affect inflation and economic growth of the United States. So it won't be the outcome of the Trump administration pursues. What the U.S. really wants to achieve is to open up the markets of the trade partners like Korea so that their product and services are sold more in the partner countries, which in turn reduce the trade deficit. In this sense, Korean government may offer several options, let's say including more import of U.S. agricultural product, meat, natural gas, and crude oils to contribute to the trade surplus of the U.S. This might be the things, President Lee mentioned.
Right. And South Korea, faces 25% reciprocal tariffs. What's likely to happen after the pause expires on July 9? And which South Korean industries will be the hardest hit once the tariffs go into effect next week?
Absolutely, absolutely. And if the 25% reciprocal tariff, goes into effect, Korean companies, because Korea really rely on export, for economic growth, these Korean companies will experience a big trouble due to the price increase in the exported product to the U.S. The demand may decrease, so absolutely export will decrease. However, the reciprocal tariff would be imposed on all other countries. Like the negotiation is only done with 2 countries, right? So the negative effect will be limited. I think the 25% reciprocal tariff will be imposed after. It won't be imposed after July 9th because Korean government tries hard to cooperate with the U.S. in the negotiation. Let's see, what will be happening.
Right, Professor Kim, we'll have to see how it goes. Thank you so much for your insight today. We appreciate it.
Thank you, for having me.
South Korea's current account remained in the black in March for the 25th month in a row, logging a current account surplus of $10.1 billion in May. According to the Bank of Korea on Friday, the figure is nearly double the number recorded in April, possibly due to a slower rise in oil prices and reduced imports. The central bank also said while this was the 3rd largest surplus on record for May, exports fell for the first time in 4 months as autos and steel struggled under U.S. tariffs. From January to May this year, the cumulative current account surplus stood at $35.11 billion, up $8.05 billion from the same period last year. Agricultural and food products exported from South Korea came to a record high in the first half of the year, led by growing popularity of Korean food like ramen and hot sauces like gochujang and 쌈장. Our economic correspondent Park Junan has the details.
South Korea's K-Food Plus exports, which combine agricultural products and agro-industrial goods, reached an all-time high in the first half of 2025, according to the Ministry of Agriculture, Food, and Rural Affairs. The total export value hit $6.67 billion, which is around 9 trillion won, a notable increase of 7.1% from the same period last year, driven by strong global demand for Korean food products. By region, North America was a standout market, with exports reaching $1.03 billion, a 24.3% increase from a year earlier. The European Union and the UK followed closely, with exports to these countries rising 23.9% to $420 million. Exports to the Commonwealth of Independent States, including Mongolia, climbed 9% to $240 million, while shipments to Gulf Cooperation Council countries rose 17.8% to $180 million. Although the first quarter outperformed the second overall, key markets such as the US, China, and Japan saw stronger growth in the second quarter, with shipments to the US standing out. Among processed foods, ramen was a major export driver, reaching $730 million in sales. Spicy ramen and new product launches resonated with global consumers, especially in markets like the Commonwealth of Independent States, China, and the US. Sauce exports grew 18%, totaling $220 million in gochujang, 쌈장, and other sauces, reflecting the rising global awareness of Korean foods. The Agriculture Ministry said its plan is to reach $14 billion worth of overseas shipments by the end of the year.
We must expand the export base by promoting product development at the corporate level and creating new agricultural products. It's also crucial to identify and address challenges Korean exporters face in the U.S. and other alternative markets through coordinated government efforts.
Amid global trade uncertainties, the ministry added that it will actively support exporters through overseas online and offline promotions, consulting on tariffs and non-tariff barriers, and responding to export risks such as currency fluctuations and logistical issues. 박준환, Arirang News.
And U.S. President Donald Trump also spoke to Russian President Vladimir Putin for nearly an hour. This was their 6th phone call this year, but little progress was made on efforts to end the war, as the Russian leader stressed that his country will not give up its aims in Ukraine. Our Lee Seung-jae has more.
U.S. President Donald Trump and his Russian counterpart Vladimir Putin held phone talks on Thursday. According to the Kremlin, Putin, while referring to the war in Ukraine, stressed that Russia will achieve the aims it set, which is to eliminate the root causes that led to the current state of affairs. Putin's message to Trump was also reported by Russia's state television.
Of course, during this call, the situation in Ukraine was discussed, so Vladimir Putin informed Trump that Russia will not step back from its goal of removing the root causes that led to the confrontation in Ukraine.
Moscow has long demanded that Kyiv give up its NATO membership ambitions. Still, during the almost 1-hour-long talks, Putin expressed his readiness to continue negotiations, adding that Moscow is looking for a political, negotiated solution to the conflict. Meanwhile, President Trump expressed a frustration over the lack of progress in the peace talks that the U.S. is trying to broker.
And we also talked about, as you know, the war with Ukraine, and I'm not happy about that. I'm not happy. No, I didn't make any progress with them today at all.
Ukrainian President Vladimir Zelensky expressed his hopes also on Thursday that he would have the opportunity to speak with Trump on Friday or in the coming days. He said that he wishes to discuss their bilateral relations as well as U.S. support amid the ongoing war with Russia. Zelensky also expressed hopes for continued support from the U.S. and Europe, stressing that strengthening cooperation and coordination through the U.S., the EU, and NATO is crucial. Lee Seung-jae, Arirang News.
And the U.S. has added North Korea to a U.S. cybersecurity threat list. According to the White House website on Thursday, President Donald Trump issued an executive order to add North Korea, Russia, and Iran to the existing list of threats. Trump's order noted that while China poses the most active and persistent cybersecurity threat to the U.S. government, significant threats are also arising from Russia, Iran, North Korea, and other countries. The previous Biden administration had issued an executive order only identifying China as a threat. The South Korean military has taken into custody a North Korean who crossed the military demarcation line, the inter-Korean land border, late on Thursday night. South Korea's Joint Chiefs of Staff said the individual crossed the line in the western part of the central front of the border and was then tracked and secured. Relevant authorities are to investigate the details of the individual's defection. No other abnormal activities have been detected in North Korea so far. The parliament approved Kim Min-seok as the new prime minister, with the ruling party unilaterally pushing through the motion amid a boycott by the main opposition. Our political correspondent Shin Ha-young reports.
Four-term lawmaker Kim Min-seok has finally been given the green light to take the post of prime minister 29 days after being nominated by President Lee Jae-myung.
I'll respect the will of the people, put the president's vision into action, and bring together the wisdom of lawmakers across party lines in managing state affairs. My top priority is overcoming the economic crisis caused by the forces of tyranny.
This comes after the Nat'l Assembly approved his appointment on Thursday to the only cabinet post in South Korea that requires parliamentary approval. Of the 179 votes cast, 173 lawmakers voted in favor, 3 voted against, and 3 ballots were invalid. The ruling Democratic Party, which holds a majority in the 22nd National Assembly, pushed the motion through unilaterally amid a boycott by the main opposition People Power Party.
Given the current crisis, it's a shame that the PPP continues to obstruct the process. If the confirmation of the Prime Minister, who is supposed to lead the cabinet, is delayed any further, the public won't stand for it.
Ahead of the plenary session, the PPP demanded Kim's withdrawal, calling him an unqualified nominee, citing his failure to submit key documents, particularly those related to his wealth.
There hasn't been a Prime Minister nominee with this many issues before. Once again, we urge President Lee Jae-myung, it's not too late. Withdraw Kim Min-seok's nomination.
The presidential office welcomed the approval, saying that it paves the way for Prime Minister Kim to work closely with President Lee and help him run state affairs smoothly. Meanwhile, despite the standoff over Kim's appointment, the parliament passed a revision of the Commercial Act during Thursday's plenary session, following an agreement reached the previous day. Among 272 lawmakers present, 220 voted in favor, 29 voted against, and 23 abstained. This was one of the contentious bills the two sides have been clashing over. The DP had pushed a revision to the act back in March, but it was vetoed by the previous administration. The revision aims to add the word shareholders to the director's duties from just company. It also introduces the so-called 3% rule, which caps the voting rights of the largest shareholder and related parties at 3% when appointing audit committee members at listed companies. The rule is intended to prevent undue influence and abuse of control by majority shareholders. This marks the first passage of a bill related to the people's livelihoods and the first time the rival parties have reached a bipartisan agreement on legislation since President Lee took office. Shin Ha-young, Arirang News.
Good morning, I'm Choi Ji-hee, and this is The World Now. We're beginning with footballer Diogo Jota. Liverpool's Portuguese forward Diogo Jota and his brother have died in a car crash in Spain. Diogo Jota and his younger brother Andre Silva, also a professional footballer, died in the crash just after midnight on Thursday local time on a highway near Spain's northwestern city of Zamora. Spanish authorities reported that the tire blew out from the Lamborghini they were driving in as it overtook another vehicle, causing the car to veer off the road and burst into flames. Emergency crews confirmed both men died at the scene. 28-year-old Jota had recently got married and had 3 young children. He was returning from vacation after helping Liverpool win the Premier League title. Jota made 182 total appearances and scored 65 goals for Liverpool. Tributes poured in from around the sports world, and hundreds of Liverpool fans gathered at Anfield, home of Liverpool, laying flowers in his memory. An investigation has been launched into the crash. The funeral is expected to be held on Saturday in the Portuguese city of Porto. Near Indonesia's tourist island of Bali, a ferry carrying 65 people sank late Wednesday night local time, leaving at least 6 dead and dozens missing. The KMP Tunu Pratama Jaya ferry, carrying 53 passengers and 12 crew members, as well as 12 vehicles, sank around 11:20 p.m., almost 30 minutes into the 5-kilometer Bali Strait crossing, after reportedly suffering engine failure and an engine room leak. Rescue efforts continued through Thursday in the rough seas, with 31 people saved but dozens still unaccounted for. On Thursday evening, rescue operations were temporarily halted due to strong currents, high waves, and limited visibility. President Prabowo Subianto has ordered a full emergency response while investigators examine the cause of the accident and whether unlisted passengers were on board. Indonesia experiences frequent maritime disasters due to its reliance on ferries and lax safety regulations. In Greece, a wildfire is spreading fast on the island of Crete, forcing over 5,000 residents and tourists to evacuate on Thursday. Strong winds reaching 80 kilometers per hour and extreme heat linked to Europe's early summer heat wave have led to the rapid spread of the blaze that broke out a day earlier. 230 firefighters and 46 fire engines and helicopters have been deployed to contain the fire, which are sweeping through forest, farmland, and residential areas. The fire service warns the island remains at very high risk, and with above-average temperatures and little rain forecast, containment is expected to take days. British band Oasis' highly anticipated reunion tour, Oasis Live 25, kicks off on Friday, July 4th in Cardiff, marking the first time Liam and Noel Gallagher have performed on the same stage in 16 years. Tickets for the UK and Ireland leg, featuring 17 stadium dates, sold out within 10 hours. A wide range of merchandise, including keyrings, hoodies, and shirts, is on sale ahead of the gig. The tour will travel globally after the UK run, heading to North America, Asia, Australia, and South America, with projected revenue exceeding $200 million. Oasis Live 25 will land in South Korea in October.
This year's monsoon season has officially ended for the southern regions and Jeju. In fact, Jeju saw its earliest monsoon end since the observations began in 1973, and the southern region recorded its second shortest monsoon period on record. However, central regions will see monsoon rain today with 5 to 20 millimeters expected. With heat wave alerts active across most of the country, the heat will persist day and night today. And this afternoon, Seoul gets up to 31 degrees, Daegu topping out at 36 degrees Celsius. Sunnier skies in southern provinces with stronger UV rays. Now, intense heat will continue to grip most of the southern regions, and Daegu will see temperatures soaring to 37 degrees by next Monday. So those traveling to southern regions this weekend need to prepare for some strong heat. In fact, the capital area will also experience some stronger heat next week. Meanwhile, the capital area and west of Gangwon-do will see some scattered rain through next Monday.
Now that ends this edition of Arirang News. Arirang News will be back at 5 p.m. Korea time. Thanks for watching.
도시는 세계와 연결되어 문화를 창조했고 새로운 것을 받아들였다.
함께여서 우리는 더 자유롭고 더 멀리 갈 수 있어.
닫힌 문이 아니라 열린 질문으로.
나에게 에이펙은
자유,
융합,
국제성,
다양성, 포용,
개발.
신라의 정신이 에이펙 2025로 이어집니다.
Your gateway to Korea, simply K-pop.
Hello everyone, I'm your Simply MC Taewi of AB6. 반갑습니다.
처음부터 다 예상한 너의 kiss. 비틀비틀 부르던 그 이름 내 계속 쌓여봐 탑사가 tricky.
Don't cry. You don't like me, that's fine. You don't like me, keep on. You don't like me, then bye. You don't like your love in your mind at a time.
귀엽던 그대로 돌아가서 말할 거야. 잘 다녀왔다고. 언제나 내 맘속에.
Then this week's Simply K-pop,
Gateway to Korea.
don't miss out.
to bring a new type of news show.
New insights, new styles, and new topics every day.
We are News Generation.
Bringing news just for you. It's Friday, July 4th here in Seoul. I'm Lee Soo-jin, and this is News Generation. Joining us today is Lee Won-bin.
Good morning.
Good morning to you. And Teddy's also with us.
Happy Friday.
And both are here to speak on behalf of people in their 20s and 30s. So today is Friday, which means that we're finally made it to the end of the work week. And honestly, we all deserve a big pat on the back for getting through another week. So we're going to send it off with something light, fun, and a little bit juicy. Dating. Ooh. So let's begin with the question we often talk about with our friends. So what's your ideal type? Won-bin, would you like to go first and tell us what qualities you're personally drawn to?
Okay, so I gotta clear my throat for this.
I'm already nervous.
I'm gonna be very honest and very transparent. So appearance is not my top priority, but I think it's like the prerequisite of someone being my ideal type. And again, I'm not saying that appearance is everything, but in my opinion, personally, you need to find someone attractive in order for you to be actually interested in them. And now, if I find someone that I am attracted to, personality is the most important. And when I say personality, it's not just simply about how nice they are or how kind they are, although those are some important traits. It's more about how compatible they are with me. So for example, I prefer to eat out often, but choose an affordable menu. However, if she prefers to wine and dine once a month, we're gonna have a hard time finding a middle ground. And it goes the same with spending habits, your hobbies, personal interest, frequency of texting and calling, and so on.
So I can tell that you're trying to be careful, so that you're trying to not offend anyone.
Yes.
But, you know, it does sound like your standards aren't exactly low. But the things you did mention are very important. You mentioned compatibility. I mean, it's so important to be able to hold a conversation with your partner. And the last part also, it kind of relates to your values, which is also something very important if you're going to live with this, or if you're looking for the long-term relationship.
It's a very important decision. So you must have strict standards for choosing who's the right one. Yeah.
Right. So this is a judgment-free zone. So I support this. So what about you, Teddy?
Yeah, I think I like someone who can balance me out, because I'm not a detail-oriented person. So I'm MBTI P person, so I miss a lot small things. So I always have a terrible crush on people whose MBTI is J, which means they're organized and they're thoughtful, and they always have some plans and remember tiny details of mine and take care of things before I even notice there's a problem. So the kind of calm and careful energy is really attractive to me. And I think when two peoples are different in the right ways, they can fill in each other's gaps. So, and honestly, I fall hard for people who make life feel a bit more steady.
So it seems like attitudes towards dating have been shifting recently. Would you say that's the case, Won-bin?
That is correct. It has been shifting a lot. And I know there is a very wide spectrum when it comes to dating preferences. So I did some research in order to provide the accurate answers. And I specifically researched the preferred traits of a partner for both men and women. And when I got the results actually were quite surprising. So normally, based on my observation, not my personal opinion, men prioritize appearance and women prioritize personality. I think we can all agree on that generally. However, according to Vipi, a Korean dating social app, it shows that men actually prioritize personality of the girl and women prioritize the appearance of the guy, such as height. And some additional interesting facts were that, number one, when they were asked the reason for not dating, men answered never had the chance to meet someone new, and women answered couldn't find the right person. And the second one is that when they were also asked, do you want to get married, more than 30% answered it doesn't matter. And the biggest reason for that was not financially ready, which I can definitely feel where they're coming from.
So that's really interesting, because I also would have thought, to be honest, that men would tend to prioritize appearance more. But now that I think about it, I do have some female friends who said, like, height, for example, is like a total deal breaker for them.
I hear that a lot too.
Right. So that would explain the results. And the last point you mentioned about how important financial is kind of would be also relevant here in Korea, where housing prices are very high. So
Absolutely.
do you have anything to add to this, Chenin?
Yeah, I think things are definitely changing nowadays because for many in MZ generations, dating and marriage are no longer a must because, you know, a lot of people are choosing to stay single. And I think that's really okay. And there's even a name for it, 초식남녀, which means RB-born men and women in English. It means they're not actively looking for someone to have a relationship, but it doesn't mean they're against love. It is different from it. They just wait until the right person comes along or until their life feels ready. You know, dating takes a lot of time, a lot of emotional energy, and not to mention money.
Yes.
So, you know, if the situation isn't right enough, they'd rather not to do it at all. And honestly, with things like YTube and Netflix and a lot of solo hobby in these days, I think they still can feel happy and entertained. So being alone doesn't mean being lonely anymore.
So just as Wonbin and Chenin both said, it feels like people's ideas about dating and relationships are really starting to shift. To get a broader sense of how people today feel about dating, we turned to our viewers on the Arirang News YouTube channel and asked for their thoughts. So we asked our viewers, what's your general view on dating? And here are the answers we got. When asked how important dating is, 68% of people said it was nice but not essential. Meanwhile, 22% said dating was something they considered essential, while 10% said they would actually prefer not to date at all. So it's pretty clear that not everyone sees dating as a must these days. Some think it's essential, while others see it just as a nice addition or even something they'd rather avoid. So as people's values and priorities continue to change, we're seeing new dating trends emerge. So Wonbin, can you tell us which ones are popular these days?
Absolutely, I can. And the dating trend, there have been a lot of new trends coming out, and I feel like it's really being affected by the micro trends on social media. And honestly, I did some research and I looked everything up, and I feel like I'm becoming too old and obsolete for the latest dating micro trends. So for example, have you guys ever heard of 태토 and 애견?
They're all over social media, so yes, I have.
It is.
Yeah.
It's like the new term or the new concept that comes from the hormones, testosterone, which is the male hormone, and estrogen, the female hormone. So testosterone is 태토 and estrogen means 애견. And if you're more leading, confident, initiative, and if you have more of that traditional masculine traits, you are considered a 태토남 or a 태토녀, and 남녀 means men and women. And if you're a little bit more sensitive, emotionally available, a little bit more shy, you are considered a 애견남 or an 애견녀. Recently, I've seen like even a mixed version where it's like 태견녀 and 애토남, and it's basically like when you're sometimes shy but also confident, where you're like very logical but you're also emotional as well. It's definitely a bit of a stretch, but I think it's still worth pointing out. And another trend is the use of social media. Now, as we all know, social media shows many things about you. It's basically your portfolio. It shows about your appearance, your personality, your personal interests, and hobbies, excuse me, as well. And it's a pretty good, I'd say, stadium or an arena to look for your potential partner. I really wouldn't say if it's the most ideal to find, the one and only destined true love, but many people are definitely beginning to approach people via social media by sliding into their DMs. And not to mention the MBTI, as we mentioned earlier, the holy Bible of personality types after the blood type in the early 2000s. It's used as a filter when people search for their partner. For example, some people who are like ESTJ go like, oh, I really can't date INFP. Some people think that some MBTIs are compatible with each other, some are not, so it's often used as a filter.
Right, you also mentioned 애견남, 태토남 in the beginning,
yes.
And that's really all over social media. But I also kind of agree. I think most people are like a mix of it.
Yeah.
So for me, I think what I can actually see, for example, like have you heard of the dog face type or the cat face type?
I have. It's another popular
one.
Right,
and there's also the Arab type or the tofu type.
Yes.
I actually prefer these kind of. I can just look at someone and then just be like, oh, like for example, you Wonbin are very much clearly an Arab type.
Thank you, and you're clearly a tubu type.
Right, so it's very easy to tell who's what. So I think that's also pretty interesting too. So what about how people meet these days? Have any new methods or trends become more common, Cherin?
Yeah, I found some really creative idea for new dating trends. One popular trend is called rotation blind date. And here's how it works. A group of men and women meet in one place, and they take turns talking to each other like speed dating in the Western culture. And I think it's great because only people who really want to date join the event. And in just a short time, you get to meet many different people. So that's why MZs love it. It's really smart and time-saving, which means it is the efficient way to love. But each person shares a simple profile too, like name, age, job, and hobbies, and MBTI as well. Then they talk one-on-one for about 10 minutes. If there's a connection, they can meet each other later. And also, one important fact for this is the cost, which is around 30,000 to 50,000 won, or approximately $22 to $37 in it. So it's way cheaper than a matchmaking service. And for MZs who care about efficiencies and saving money, it's a perfect way to find love for them.
So it's clear that dating values and ideals have shifted here in Korea, but what's it like in other countries? So up next, we'll be chatting with a Gen Z guest from the UK to hear his take. And that conversation is coming right after the break, so stay tuned.
NewsGen wants to hear from you. Go to YouTube and search our channel Arirang News. Click Community and leave a comment down below. Make a new type of news with us.
We're joined today by Jessie Ashdown, who's from the UK and is currently studying here in Korea. Hi, Jessie. Thank you so much for connecting with us today.
Hello, thank you for having me.
So how do young people in your country approach dating these days, and how has this changed compared to the past?
Well, I think historically the UK has always been quite a structured culture socially. There's always been rules and regulations you sort of have to follow, especially from the Victorian era. But these days it's sort of, as a response to that historic behaviour, sort of shifted in the opposite direction, where there are really no rules or there's no structure to dating in the UK these days. With the rise of especially like situationship culture, is something I've observed since I was young. I think there's really anything goes. That's how I would say.
All right, well, thank you for giving us the overview of the dating market in the UK. Now, personally, are there any fun or unique trends when it comes to dating in your country? Like certain apps people use, or go-to dating spots, or new ways that people are meeting these days?
I would say when it comes to things like apps and online dating, it's typically the same apps people have always used, the same ones they would use in Korea. I do actually think that in-person dating meetups has sort of integrated with pub culture. You might sometimes have pub dating, because that wasn't typically a thing. But after COVID, I think there was a desire for interpersonal relationship, actually meeting in person, which is something that's gone up. But I think the main issue is that the UK is fundamentally a country that's sort of resistant to trends. People never really follow trends in the UK from fear of looking like they're being sort of collectivist or like following the trend. They're always very individualistic. So any trends that I, for example, see in Korea, I never would imagine seeing in the UK.
Okay, thank you for your great point. And this is the last question. How is the dating culture in UK is different from Korea?
Well, I would say it's completely different. Well, when I first moved to Korea anyways, I think in Korea there's things like 3-day rule, 100-day anniversary, all these sort of like milestones which would never exist in the UK. You'd be absolutely crazy if you said that. Or something like a blind date, like a sogating, would never happen. In the UK, it's more sort of, you're meeting and you're in the sort of talking phase, and you'd be in this sort of nebulous state for around 5 months where you don't know you're in a relationship. Whereas in Korea, it's very much okay, if we're not dating, let's move on and find someone else. But I think, as you were saying earlier in the segment, I think the behaviors and attitudes in Korea are shifting sort of closer to what it's like in the UK, where there's less expectations to dating. So I think it will be really interesting to see what the differences are like in, let's say, 20 years.
Right, so like you said, like there's obviously the culture here, for example, in Korea, we don't have pub culture. So it's also interesting to see how, like, for the young people too, it's changing and where there's less expectations. So thank you for sharing your insight with us today.
Of course, thank you for having me. Have a great day.
So we just heard from a young person from the UK about how dating culture there is both similar to and different from Korea. So what's clear is that dating has changed a lot among young people worldwide, and not all of those changes are positive. So with these shifts in dating culture, what are some things we should be cautious about, Wonbin?
One thing that these new trends have in common is that they're constantly trying to categorize people into different types. And it's definitely a fun, easy, convenient way to know who someone is, but people can depend on it too much, or people can actually judge people just by their MBTI or what hormone type they are. And it can also cause some conflicts between genders and different types of people. So we should keep in mind that these trends of categorizing people are just for fun, because nowadays, both socially, politically, and in many different ways, I feel like there's a big polarization in the public. So we definitely have to be cautious about that.
So to be honest, I'm a huge believer of blood types. I think when I met both of you guys, one of the first questions I asked was, what's your blood type?
Yes, I remember that.
But I've also had experiences, actually one of our PDs, I also asked him what's his blood type, and maybe because he's a blood type B, and in Korea, blood type B, like B-type men tend to not be represented in the best way in movies and stuff. So yeah, I was told maybe you shouldn't ask that.
Yes,
so
yes.
It's true, it can cause some conflict with people who don't want to be categorized.
Yes.
And for a record, I support blood type Bs. My mom is one, so.
It's just for fun, so don't take it too seriously.
Exactly.
That's the most important part.
Exactly. So what are your thoughts on this, Cherin?
Yeah, that's a great point. And I think in this slow growth economy, many young people feel a lot of pressures in these days. So they became part of the Npo generations. That Po means 포기, and it means giving up in English. So this means giving up on things one by one. And for some people, dating feel like luxury, and they focus on efficiency, not emotion. So everything becomes calculations. But sometimes I think that's a little bit sad, because it means romance get lost. Right. And of course, society is changing, and we have to admit it, and that's the reality. But maybe, just maybe, we could bring a little more heart into dating. And it's okay to be a bit romantic too. And not to mention, it shouldn't always be about who pays for what or who pays more. Because if you love each other, you can spend time together without spending a lot of money.
Well said, well said.
To wrap up our discussion for today, Wonbin, what are some dating trends we can expect to see in the future?
Well, for me, if I kind of think about the future, I'm thinking that robots and AIs can definitely be a game changer, because recently there were some movies about humans falling in love with robots or AIs, and in that movie it was someone who had a husband or a wife and they fell in love with another robot. And I could definitely see this happening if technology comes to real life. Like, this definitely sounds realistic, and I think it will be harmful in the long term, as it will lead to lower birth rates if people just have relationship with robots. But honestly, it might be a peaceful option for both men and women in the short term. Yeah.
That's a really interesting point. And I think it shows how much our idea of connection is also evolving. And if people genuinely feel like they're being understood by AI, I mean, this can also compete with, in a way, real human relationships. And like you also said, it does raise a big questions of what it means for the overall society, though. So what do you think about this, Cherin?
I think it looks like a little bleak, but I honestly think that things will improve, because you look at what the government is doing to help newlyweds these days. It makes it a little less burdensome to get married. But also, mass media has a great deal of impact on the society as well. There are so many dating programs and a lot of parenting program too. So I think these shows will encourage more people to date and get married too.
Right, so as dating culture continues to shift and becomes less of a priority for many, fun compatibility trends are gaining traction because they offer a lighthearted way to learn more about ourselves and add some enjoyment to our lives. The key is to really embrace these changes and trends without letting them create divisions, though, using them instead as tools to find happiness and connection in your own way. So this brings us to the end of today's episode of News Generation, but News Gen will be back on Monday at 10:30 a.m. Korea time. Big thanks to Wonbin.
Always a pleasure.
And Cherin.
Thank you for having me.
And to all our viewers, thanks for watching, and we hope you have the best weekend. We are News Generation.
set the facts straight. Get Korea right. K-culture is sweeping the globe. K-pop, K-drama, K-movie, K-food, and even K-beauty. Korean cultural content is gaining more and more fans worldwide. It's indeed the golden age of K-culture. But with this growing interest comes an increase in misinformation about Korea. There's so much inaccurate information out there. Even AI can sometimes get it wrong. So, we must set things straight and correct all the misinformation. So here's the plan. The Voluntary Agency Network of Korea, VANK, and Arirang TV present the Get Korea Right project. Our goal is to provide accurate information on important keywords that come to mind when we think of Korea. Blatant errors and false claims that distort history. It's time to set the record straight, sharing the true history and culture of Korea while raising the national brand. Let's get started with Get Korea Right. Are you ready to join?
Arirang TV is conducting an overseas TV viewer survey to provide you with a better global broadcast service. Share your valuable feedback on the Arirang TV website www.arirang.com or mobile application. Survey participants will be selected at random to receive special gifts. 2025 Arirang Overseas TV Viewer Survey. We look forward to hearing from you.